measuring the moving screen, the future of tablet measurement, or perhaps I should say the beginning of tablet measurement. My comments today will be pulled from data that we collect through the National People Meter, as well as the Nielsen Mobile report on connected devices that was recently released. There are three principal topics that I want to cover. I want to first give you some numbers or incidence or penetration on iPads or other connected devices, and put those numbers into context on how much viewing is really happening. Secondly, I'd like to give you some insights from tablet owners, characteristics, behaviors, and their receptivity to advertising. And then third, how are we going to measure these additional screens? I stole this slide from somebody else that I've seen recently, and appliances in the household. New appliances do not always replace the prior appliance. So it might be an antiquated visual, but the toaster, or rather the microwave, didn't replace the toaster. In fact, I can probably get rid of the stove altogether. But as these products evolve, what's next? Takeout food or eating out? If you live in the city, you probably don't need any of the above. But they are additive to each other, and there are different use cases for all different devices, and I think that holds true for electronics or connected items. I don't need to tell everybody that measurement of TV on an iPad has fast become the hottest topic, with great focus and attention at the Nielsen company. This is for operators, broadcasters, and cable networks. Every other call we're receiving is about this, so it is one of our key, if not our #1 priority. So everyone wants an iPad meter. And it's not just for media companies or advertisers, but it's also for the device manufacturers and the mobile operators. The mobile operators need to optimize their networks and their pricing plans. We have a lot of telecommunication clients, as well as device manufacturers want to know about the features that they should prioritize. But some basic numbers. Since I produced this slide, the iPad success has continued, and globally I think the sales numbers is up to about 20 million. Sometimes it's broken out by US, sometimes it isn't, but either way, the price point of the iPad 2.0 being $499 just continues that success. And the iPad for a new tablet is the hands-down winner, and I'll show you those numbers in a moment. But 80% of the tablets out there are iPads. But when you consider the price point of an iPad 2, you're bumping up a really pretty good flat screen TV. You can get a 42-inch at that price at Best Buy for about the same amount of money. As we rotate through the National People Meter panel, we're about a third of the way there. We have identified 577 iPads in 475 homes. Right now, that represents about 2.3%. We expect that to probably go to 5%. I'm not going to guess on how many iPads actually that will mean. But keep in mind, these are just iPads right now. And as we saw in the smartphone market, iPhone sort of redefined that market. The Android properties could come along and redefine and certainly put out a different price point for iPad viewing. So if you remember anything from today, it is that the Nielsen company is taking iPads very seriously, or any tablet viewing, because it is live viewing, very seriously. And we have developed the underlying infrastructure to incorporate any internet-delivered television into our existing factories and the business models that you operate under, and we call this the extended screen program. But outfitting iPads with the ability to collect exposure to the Nielsen audio codes, that's key. That's the next step to enable these devices to be metered. Let's do a little tablet math here. Now, is it impacting the ratings? Not yet. By no means is it impacting it today. But as I said, we're taking it very seriously. First of all, there has to be a sizable penetration of iPads, which we certainly see happening. So for you to impact the ratings, you have to have an iPad, and then you have to live in a service territory in Time Warner or Cablevision area in order to have access to more than just one particular application, have access to numerous programs or networks. And then you have to download the application onto your iPad or your tablet in the future, and then what percentage of your time will be spent watching that content on it. So today, it's negligible. but it is something that we all need to watch and be aware of. Its impact, or the substitution effect of tablets, is certainly impacting other computers and e-readers in the household. And this came from the Nielsen Mobile Connected Device Report. And what it shows, and the question that was asked was, since purchasing your tablet, how much usage on other devices, what's the percentage of usage on other devices that have changed? So 35% of tablet owners state that they are using their desktop computer less often or not at all. 32% of tablet owners for their PC, less or not at all, the e-reader, and then a gaming console. The profile of a tablet owner is usually younger and male, certainly with iPads, but iPad owners are spending 2.7 more time with the content on their device than just an exclusive iPhone owner. Even when they own both, the heavy content is skewed to the iPad. 56% of their content of their tablet is internet Wi-Fi only. 70% of the tablets are used when watching TV, no surprise there. 98% list the home as their primary location for use. It might be different in this audience. And when at home, obviously half the time it's spent using it in the living room. There were other quotes about other rooms that we published that I'm not going to go into. So, tablet use case. Great for personal video, great for gaming, magazines. This morning, Betsy Frank was talking about how an iPad is the perfect environment for a magazine, very engaging environment. You see the ads, you have the artwork, etc. Future, a companion screen. You know, the question about dual video and how engaged you'll be, I think, is still looming or out there. And a universal remote. Don't I love that idea? You know, I'm always classically the one that lost the remote in the pillows. But insufficient, we won't see it. Phone calls or family viewing, it's just, you know. And yet what we also saw in the connected devices survey was that the iPad is still being shared, and tablets are being shared in general, and it's not just anybody's exclusive device, particularly if there are kids in the home. I mentioned this earlier, consumers that are intenders or tablet intenders, the iPad with 3G and Wi-Fi capability is hands down, you know, the front runner, the lead horse, the Belmont winner at 48%. iPad with Wi-Fi only, second, 23%. A distant third is the Samsung Galaxy, which is an Android tablet. But as I said, it's early in the game. Watch what happened in smartphones. We might see that happen in tablets as well. An interesting point, though, in that circle, 14% of tablet intenders already own one or more tablets. So there is no stopping the craving for devices in those early adopter households. Now, this slide talks about apps and the consumer willingness to pay for content on an application. And I know there's a lot of numbers up there, but focus on sort of those olive green numbers on the left and the teal in the middle there, and you'll quickly get the picture that consumers believe that content is either priced appropriately or low across all categories, from news, TV shows, movies, books, all the way down to sports. So we don't believe that the whole pricing scenario has played itself out. Some things could go up, others could go down. But right now, consumers generally feel they're getting a pretty good bargain. And even for movies where there may be a little more resistance than others, 68% of consumers reported that movies were either priced appropriately or low. So that's good news for content providers, perhaps. And the next two slides I have are about advertising owners and their receptivity towards, tablet owners and their receptivity towards advertising. I'll start on the left on this, and once again, the olive green color that you see there that's circled in those little boxes, those are the numbers I'm going to focus in on. And we're comparing tablets to e-readers, to portable media players, to smartphones, and to netbooks. And the first question on the left says, advertising on this connected device is acceptable. So the tablet wins by 12 percentage points. I don't mind ads on this device as long as it does not disrupt my data activities. Once again, the tablet far in the front. So maybe this is a halo effect, maybe this is new, but we see this for the attitudes towards receptivity on high production or high quality ads as well. Interestingly, the third set of bars there, I am open to ads on this device if it lowers my monthly bill. The smartphone wins out there, obviously because you always have a bill associated with a smartphone. If you have a tablet and it's Wi-Fi only and you're not paying for that Wi-Fi, you may be less sensitive to that. And the second point on advertising, the high production values increase the ad receptivity. And this, the gray is all connected devices, then the iPhone in blue, and then the iPad in that olive green. I'm more likely to look at ads if they have an interesting video. I enjoy ads that are interactive. Ads on my connected device are interesting and new. I think we have a halo effect here. We'll look at this again next year, but they are receptive to high production, quality and value. So it's good news for ad engagement. Now, switching to the final topic, which is what's next in measurement. And most of my comments now are exclusively talking about iPad measurement, because that's where we're seeing the TV content obviously being delivered. By no means are we ignoring Android tablets or devices, but no TV or no professional content from operators or MVPDs are being delivered at this point right now. God knows what announcement will come out tomorrow, but we're watching it very closely. However, for iPad viewing, for all practical purposes, I mean, the iPad is really becoming a TV. It's a cordless, wireless, portable television. The content distributors want to provide the consumers with the content, and obviously the content owners want fair compensation for this distribution. So many eyes are on Nielsen right now. And as I mentioned earlier, we developed its underlying infrastructure to incorporate any internet-delivered TV via the extended screen platform. And to include iPad currency qualified viewing, we're creating a meter which collects exposure to the Nielsen audio codes. And we have two options to do that. One, to work directly and integrate the Nielsen audio watermark detection into the application itself at the media company or the operator, or integrate the audio watermarks detection into the iOS operating system. Now, we're working with several operators and media companies on the first option, and that's going well, and more will be announced as we develop that capability to meter and collect, and it will work under the C3 rules as the full load of commercials is being released that way right now. The second option, working with Apple Computer, we're in discussions there. It's moving slower. Apple usually doesn't allow applications to run simultaneously, understandably so. It is a mobile device. They're probably concerned about battery life, but that door is still open and we'll continue that dialogue. And I know others, interested parties in the room, have approached Apple as well. So we're working at it from within the application. This is for video, obviously, on an iPad. On a separate note, we have created on-device meters. For those of you that subscribe to our mobile services or use any of our mobile data, the on-device meters currently work right now for both Android and iOS devices. With the iOS device, it's a proxy server on the Android. It's not a meter that actually sits within it, but the Android platform was very easy for us. But that collects app usage. If it is video, it is not program specific. So that's separate for the smartphone, mobile world, and video professionally or C3 qualified video we're measuring through the iPad and any other tablet that comes along. So I have 26 seconds before David Poltrack comes up here, so I don't think I have time for questions, but I will be here afterwards and be happy to entertain any thoughts or comments or concerns you may have. And there's plenty of Nielsen people, in the front table that will help you as well. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I feel like the guys at the Tonys last night. I got to thank 5,000 people. I got to go very fast. So I'm going to talk very quickly. So this is all available on some website somewhere, so don't worry about it. We've been very busy since we launched our CBS television initiative on developing better ways to define the television audience for advertisers at the ARF last March. My presentation today is going to cover some of the highlights of what we've been working on. There are 4 sections. First, we're going to talk a little bit about single source approach, then further defining the demand product pool segments. Third, talking about 2 key category applications, and finally, if we have time, a programming application. In our March presentation, we compared the ROI for TV programs, TV ad campaigns, selected on the basis of demographic delivery to those based on heavy user category delivery from the Nielsen Catalina single source database. Now, many of you correctly at that time pointed out that our results were somewhat skewed by some outliers. So we now have data for all 20 categories, and we've conducted a more statistically rigorous analysis. This rigorous analysis, which models dollar shifts controlling for penetration, produces stable, statistically significant results that are not driven by outliers. The key conclusion from the analysis remains: selecting schedules based on heavy product user delivery is far superior to selecting schedules based on age. For the categories measured, the behavioral targeting delivered an average of 2.5 times the ROI leverage of the demographic targeting. Another way to state this is that a 20% increase in media delivery to heavy category users yields an additional $47 per 1,000 exposed households, compared to just $19 for a 20% increase in media delivery for women 18 to 49 in the categories covered. This means that a 41% increase against heavy users can double the campaign impact, while it would take a 103% increase in women 18 to 49 to accomplish this same goal. We are also clients of TRA. The TRA results are quite similar, although not quite as high as those for the Catalina results. Overall, as the TRA slide shows, they show a 28% advantage. And if you missed the TRA presentation that just concluded in the store next door, you should get a copy of it, because the Mars data is spectacular. They really are doing a great job, Mars. They are way ahead on using this kind of analysis, and you really should take a look at that data. It's great. I know that some of you, while accepting the superiority of user-based targeting, question the magnitude of the ROI impact. That could be the subject of a much longer presentation. However, think about this. Buyers using adults 18 to 49 often choose programs based on the concentration of adults 18 to 49 delivered, represented by an index, a very dangerous statistical measure, by the way. As a result, they substantially increase the demand for programs with high adult 18 to 49 indices or concentration, resulting in a price premium being attached to these programs. However, since virtually no category has its user base confined completely to this demo segment, the focus on these programs limits the coverage of the full user base. The results are the double impact of lower category coverage and higher premium unit prices, leading to the substantially lower ROI. Now, let's switch to our new demand pool segmentation approach. For those of you who are still unfamiliar with this segmentation approach, shame on you. The segmentation was developed for CBS by Cambridge Marketing. It's based on their renowned demand landscape segmentation approach. The statistical base for the segmentation was a large 7,000 respondent survey profiling 14,000 different television viewing occasions. Over 150 questions covering lifestyle, attitudes, cross-platform media demand, technology involvement, and viewership behavior were used to define the demand profit pool segments, as well as the need states underlying this behavior and the program preferences or palettes favored by these respondents. Once the segmentation was defined, the database was linked to other databases, including the Nielsen People Meter sample. In all, we defined 6 segments or profit pools that were developed around television viewing. In our March presentation, we defined the 6 product pool segments in terms of their relationship with TV and technology, as well as demographically. I don't have time today to take you through the full profile of the 6 segments. Today I want to focus on just 2 of these segments, media trendsetters and program passionates, which we have selected as the most important. These 2 segments are key to media value. Media trendsetters are the largest of the segments at 21% of the population. They are of critical importance because they are early adopters of new tech content and technology, and they are social diffusers. They are influential consumers who talk about content and technology with others. Program passionates are the second largest segment. They are the top segment in terms of share of primetime television viewing. They are also the most affluent segment. Each demand pool has a distinct demographic profile. Again, focusing on the 2 primary segments, media trendsetters are more male than female, from all age groups, more likely to have children living with them, and more ethnically diverse. Program passionates are the most affluent segment on average. They are more likely to be women than men. Again, they cover all age segments, just slightly older than the media trendsetters, and they are less ethnically diverse. These are the profiles we presented in March. Let me summarize what we've learned about these segments since then. Through fusion between the demand pool database and the Nielsen online databases, we have found that all of the segments are active in the terms of video streaming. Of course, the younger streamer segment has the highest indices of video streaming, followed by media trendsetters. While each segment is active on the internet, as you would expect, they favor different sites. Media trendsetters favored sites such as Hulu and other video content sites. While with their male majority, they also go for sports sites. And true to their social diffuser profile, they're big users of Gawker and other media gossip-driven sites. Program passionates, with their female majority, favor women's lifestyle sites. Through the fusion of the demand pool with MRI, we're able to get magazine preferences by each segment. The more male media trendsetter segment favors sports-related magazines. True to the social diffuser role, they also are more likely to read People magazine. And the more female program passionates favor female lifestyle magazines. The ethnic diversity of the media trendsetter segment is reflected in its choice of radio formats, with an emphasis on rhythmic, urban, and rock. They also lean towards alternative and CHR top 40 formats. Program passionates are more likely to go for the softer adult contemporary sound. Unlike media trendsetters, they're higher than average listeners to both the news talk and religious formats. Again, given the time constraints, I'm focusing on just the 2 most important segments. The profile information is available for all of the segments. So here's a profile of program passionates. They're heavy female, they skew female. They're more upscale. They have the highest DVR penetration, the highest HD penetration. Almost all are cable subscribers. They have more college graduates than the general population, and they spend about 5.6 hours a week on the internet. Media trendsetters are the most urban segment. They have higher DVR penetration than the general population. They're almost all cable subscribers. They also spend 5.6 hours on the internet. They are very fit. They're fans of 3D programming and can't wait to get more 3D on television. They are big watchers of movies on DVD. They like to watch television with others, and they like sports television. as you would expect, the choices of television program between these two segments are not similar. The same broad appeal hit shows can be found on the top 25 list of but the order of these programs differs significantly across the 114 programs that we measured. In fact, the average program has a rank order differential of 13 places. So, we now know a great deal more about the consumers from these segments than we did in March. How do advertisers apply this knowledge in the media selection process? First, we have to tie the media consumption profile to the consumption profile for their products and services. One database that we're able to segment across data pools is our CBS Entertainment Panel, a panel of upscale consumers with a greater than average involvement with media and entertainment technology. Let's look at what we've learned about the segmentation from that panel. We can see, looking at this, that the media trendsetters are the key, most dynamic panel segment in terms of all of the key measures. Looking at movie-going, media trendsetters are by far number one, but program passionates are also very much involved in movie-going. Looking at primary cars and the ownership of new cars, again, media trendsetters are the leaders, but followed closely by program passionates. From the advertiser perspective, they're also interested in people who want to try new things. The media trendsetters, again, are the leaders in terms of people who want to buy new clothing and who want to stay in fashion. They are people who try new products. They're people who are looking for new brands and get bored with the same old thing. And they're looking for new and exciting experiences. This is definitely the key marketing sector. But program passionates, the affluent program passionates, are not far behind in all of these key demographic measures. So if we look further, and I'm just going to focus on two critical markets. Let's look at the auto market and the movie-going market. First, among luxury auto brands, media trendsetters clearly favor Cadillac and represent 1/4 of all Cadillac owners. However, for Lexus, the picture is quite different. Now, program passionates for Lexus, program passionates are the leading owner segment at 22%. And when we perform the fusion with the Nielsen People Meter panel, we can actually look at the top 25 list for Cadillac owners and how much it differs from that of Lexus owners. We see similar ranking variations when we compare the top 25 list for both sets of owners for media trendsetters. And both of these lists also differ from the list of program passionates. Let's take one program as an example. The critically acclaimed CBS program, The Good Wife, ranks just 48th among adults 18 to 49 and 30th among adults 25 to 54. Yet it is number 19 among Cadillac owners, and even more impressive, number 10 among Lexus owners. Certainly, an age-based approach for using either of these demographics would significantly undervalue this critical program. But luxury cars are expensive and therefore not necessarily the province of the young. Let's look at a category associated with youth. Let's look at movie-going. Here we see media trenders are the key media trenders are again represent a significant amount of the avid moviegoers, but also very high are the younger skewing streamers. Despite this younger viewing profile, So we look at program passionates and media trendsetters against avid moviegoers, and we see again a differential in the programs, 13 ranked positions. When we look at the younger streamers against program passionates, the oldest group, we see 15 position differential in the ranking. So clearly you would buy different programs if you were targeting each of these segments. Again, looking at our example, we see that The Good Wife is number 19 among avid moviegoers. far higher in ranking than it is against either of the demographics, despite the younger skewing movie profile. And it is different for all of the different categories: trendsetters, program passionates, and streamers. So it's strongest against the program passionates, which of course are a more female-oriented category, but it's stronger, significantly stronger among all the different segments than it would be against age and sex. And the real bottom line for films is it's different by movie. So if your market is a Bridesmaids or Harry Potter or Hangover, program passionates are as valuable or even more valuable than streamers. But if you're X-Men First Class and Transformers, then you're going to be wanting to target more the streamers, and the value of Good Wife is of less interest to you. I'm out of time, but I just wanted to give you some sampling. This is the type of work that we're doing. We're continuing to do, we're starting experiments with major advertisers. The point is basically that this way of evaluating media is more interesting, more exciting. It provides context. It gives you information and insights into messaging, and most importantly, it's more fun. Thank you.
So I'm going to talk to you today about a study we did at Turner in cooperation with Magna Global, and the study was about online ad commercialization. And just to start us off, how many of you have heard of TV Everywhere? Been in the trades for about a year or so? Okay, good, decent sampling. Just to give you a sense of what that's about, TV Everywhere is an initiative that's been led by Time Warner and is really about what it says. It's TV everywhere for everyone, where they want it, when they want it, provided, the big provided, that you can prove that you're actually paying for that content some way, somehow, whether that's with an MSO or a telco company or a satellite, et cetera. Pretty simple idea. In fact, we think it's a very elegant solution. A lot of what we hear about today with technology and all of the rapid acceleration of what we see in the marketplace is that everybody wants what they want when they want it. And it creates a lot of conflict, frankly, for all of us in the industry, and I know we're all part of that here, because there are business relationships and reasons why we have to tread lightly in some cases. But what's elegant about the TV Everywhere solution is it really sort of solves that triangulation of issues of access, of exclusivity, and control. And this is a real shortcut way of saying that we're trying to handle that. From the MSO side, obviously they're concerned about broadband households who aren't subscribing to content, being able to get content, and we're allowing through authentication for people to prove that they actually do pay for it, so that satisfies that situation. On the content provider side, obviously we need a sustainable business model, and a lot of the work that you'll see in the next couple of slides will support the fact that online commercialization is possible and at the levels that we currently see in the television landscape. So that allows us to expand access of the library to grow the viewership across lots of platforms. For the advertisers, they're obviously concerned about commercial skipping. That's an issue we're all concerned about with the industry. And that really allows us to satisfy that issue of viewer control, right? Viewers want to be able to fast forward through content, but we're going to be able to not allow that during the commercial minutes. And for viewers, they want access, they want control, and we're going to give them all of those things in their viewer experience. And so that's why we look at TV Everywhere as an elegant solution. It's a win across multiple levels. And all of that is a little bit of background to give you some understanding as to why we launched the study. So the million-dollar question is, if I'm going to put full-scale content online and we're going to put it up with a full ad load, will people actually watch it? Will they watch the same amount of commercials that they watch on television today? So we had two questions as we put together the study, and they're both here. What is the optimal online ad load that maximizes that consumer experience as well as advertising exposure and revenue? And secondly, is there a difference between a 30-minute piece of content and a 60-minute piece of content, and will we see some variances there? Now, we're researchers, so we do a little bit of background on what's out there. And as most of you may imagine, you've probably seen lots of studies over the past 8 to 10 years about whether or not people will accept advertising online. And there are a lot of studies here, but it's mostly attitudinal. It's a lot of, will you watch commercials online if we put them there? And as you might expect, most people say no. And there is also a lot of variation in the studies that we saw. Mostly it's been done looking at comparison to the television experience across different demographic groups. Will younger people accept it more or less? And frankly, there was a lot of conflicting results that we saw in the data. There has been a little bit of behavioral research that we've seen in the past, I would say 8 to 9 months now, and some of that came out earlier in the year with the CW when we also released this study, and there was a freewheel study that was done back in, I think it was January or February. But all of that to say that we're starting to look at this from an actual behavioral perspective as opposed to what will people do and what will they say they'll do. So in terms of methods, as I said, we partnered with Magna Global because we wanted to have a big agency, their portfolio of brands to work with. We wanted to create a real experience for consumers as they went online. And most importantly, we wanted to be able to have a study that was unobtrusive and that would really help us get at the differences in claimed behavior versus what we actually could observe and what actually happened. From the Turner Library, we pulled out 2 of our dramas, Memphis Beat, which premiered its first season last year. The test was done almost a year ago in July. And we also used the drama Hawthorne, as well as Meet the Browns, which was on our TBS property. Now, one thing about that is that Turner, up until recently, when we started off with TV Everywhere, was airing our original episodes 7 days after linear air. So everything that was tested actually was in that 7-day post-original air window. And we partnered with a company called Optimost to create an experience that was a blind test. Consumers were not aware that they were participating in research. Nobody was recruited for the study. They simply came to the site that they always come to view an episode of Hawthorne or Memphis Beat or Meet the Browns. And depending on where they were in the queue, they were served one of 3 different tests. And we'll get to that in a second. So one thing I wanted to remind you is that fast forwarding was disabled during the test, as it is now in the current player that we have for TV Everywhere. It was disabled during the ad breaks, but it was not disabled during the program content. So if you were watching the show, you could fast forward through different elements, but you could not fast forward in the ad breaks. Now, there's a lot of savvy people out there. Some of them could figure out that if they actually hit that fast forward button right before that ad break, they could actually fast forward into the next segment. But if they actually waited for the ad to start, they were not going to be able to fast forward. We had 6 cells, and the ad load was varied across those 6 cells based on the content that we had and the different load of the advertising. The ads were randomly selected, they were rotated, and they were served so that there was no bias in the data. They were also a mix of 30s and 15s. So here's what the cells looked like. As I said, the panelists would come in. They weren't they didn't know they were panelists. They went in to see either a drama or a comedy, and based on where they were in the queue, they would either get one of these experiences. For the dramas, we had 3 cells, a 20-minute ad load, which is likened to a linear television experience, a 10-minute ad load, which was somewhat modified, and a minute 15 seconds, which is what they were getting and what most people get today. On the comedy side, obviously it's a 30-minute comedy. The linear ad load was actually a little more heavily weighted with advertising. So there were 16 minutes of advertising. So we pushed the envelope a little to see how far we could go. The modified ad load is actually representative of what they would get in a television experience today with 8 minutes. And the third cell was 1 minute, which is what they would get currently. And like I said, with Magna Global, we were able to test this with real brands who had real advertising in the marketplace at that time across lots of different categories. One thing should be noted here about the way this test was done. We had to actually build a player and build an experience in which we could measure viewing in 5-second increments, both in the programming segments and in the advertising segments. There was going to be no way for us to tell when and where people were coming out and dropping out of the audience unless we could do that in 5-second increments. And most people will tell you we measure things on stream start. So this was a much more advanced technical application that took us several months just to build. And what do we already know? Just from data that's out there about how people view content, the circles actually aren't in the right place here, but basically we know that consumers are watching about half of the content that they select to view online, half of the minutes. And that's both from, Omniture data that we have internally as well as Rentrack data on the video on demand side. So here's the big aha. The varying ad loads didn't affect time spent viewing pretty much at all. Viewers for dramas, the 2 dramas we had for TNT, watched 29 minutes on average across all 3 cells. And you can see the 3 different cells here, the linear plus ad load, the modified ad load, and the online current model of ad load. And really, it was 30 minutes, 29 minutes, 26 minutes, not a lot of variation here. We also looked at commercial retention, right? So we compared the commercial minutes to the program minutes for that experience in the test, and we compared that back to live television. And what we found interestingly on TNT was that in our tests, all 3 of the cells actually did better on commercial retention than what we see in data from Nielsen in the live TV experience. And here are those 3 different cells. You can see they look almost identical. The big news here is that, it doesn't matter how much advertising we put in here. You have a little bit of an audience loss when we get to that linear side, but not that much. So people have a pretty good appetite here, and we're not going to be switching out, or they're not switching online, but they're not going to be leaving the experience. For TBS, the results were pretty much the same. This was our Comedy Meet the Browns. On average, viewers watched about 14 minutes of content across all 3 of the test cells, 15 minutes in the linear plus, about 37% completion of the program, to 13 minutes in what we see in a regular online ad load. It's the same story here, you can see, in terms of the 3 cells and the pattern of viewing. Now, it's not what we usually see, right? We're used to seeing these sort of nice little sine waves in linear television viewing. But remember, in the online world, people aren't coming in and out of the audience. They're coming in at the beginning, and then they're pretty much leaving in various points throughout. So what did we learn? We learned, regardless of the ad load that we served up, and remember, people did not know that they were being tested, consumers will spend approximately the same amount of time watching full-length episodes online. That is a big, huge discovery for us and very helpful going into a TV everywhere landscape. In terms of commercial retention, it's as good, if not better in some cases, than what we see on air. And for advertising exposure, obviously, we're very happy that we can recreate what we see in the linear landscape in the online landscape. So, as I mentioned earlier, and we'll wrap it up, this is a win-win-win-win for the industry. It's a win for viewers because they're going to get more content on more platforms at no additional cost. It's a win for cable operators because it's a better offering for their customers overall. It's a win for cable networks because there are more platforms, more viewing that will be added, and we'll be able to find those harder to reach viewers. And a win for advertisers, more impressions available in the market, better demographics for their television advertising. And what we're learning is online commercialization is pretty well tolerated, despite what people will tell you. They actually do hang in for it, and it seems to be a tolerable trade-off for them as well, instead of paying for their content. And I give you a minute, almost 2 minutes back. So thank you very much.
So thanks for being here through, so we're the last presentation here, we have a few really interesting points of data to report that we're going to try to cover as quickly as possible. I know that you guys are eager to head out for the day. So let's get started and talk a little bit about what our study is about. So we actually had a very interesting lead up to this. We did not know what the results were before we discussed the panel with David, so we actually are thrilled that there are some really interesting results to come out of this. We finished our data collection and analysis just a few weeks ago. So what we're going to cover is what is the role of social media in the media mix, and specifically we're going to talk about the impact on sales of social media, which is an extremely important issue for practically all of our clients. So this really is happening because social is an extremely important part of consumers' days now. So a recent TNS study showed that people spend more time in social networks than on email. So it's become to the point where we need to ask some really hard questions. Specifically, we need to go and look at, can social media impact sales-related metrics such as spend and consumption? And can different types of channel combinations be more effective? And this is something that, in particular on the channel combination side, we as folks that work a lot with integrated media campaigns need to understand, is social effective just by itself, or is it more effective in combination with other channels in driving sales? So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and here's the data today. So there are two recent studies with somewhat conflicting results. So on the one hand, we have an Edison research study that came out just a bit earlier this year that said about a quarter of people active in social networks cited Facebook as an influencer of their purchase decision. So a very interesting amount of data coming out of that study, which suggests that sales are driven by social media. A bit earlier this year, we had something come out of Forrester and GSI Commerce, where they actually did a study that looked at click tracking to get a sense of whether there was a directly traceable impact of social media. And they found that there was almost no impact. So less than 1% of sales were driven by social networks. And so that seems to be a bit conflicting with the earlier research or this survey research. But when you think about it, social media is really around recommendations and having people form opinions. So suggesting that people would do a direct click is perhaps a little bit the wrong way to look about it. It's sort of, if you were sitting at a restaurant having dinner and someone recommended a great refrigerator, you'd like leave the table and go buy the refrigerator. It doesn't happen that way. So I think it's important for us to look at social media in a little bit more nuanced context, and that's what we did. So I'm going to pass it over to Walter to take you through a bit of our objectives and methodology.
That's great. Thank you, Irfan. Good evening, everybody. So what we wanted to do here was really evaluate the purchase impact of social media by itself, but then also in combination with other channels. And so we're all clear what we mean by social media. We're talking about things like Facebook, Twitter, online video viewed on YouTube or Facebook, online ratings and reviews and blogs. And for both Facebook and Twitter, we combine together both brand pages or brand handles along with consumer-generated content that where there was a brand reference in a news feed item, a status update, or a tweet. What we wanted to do is pick a category where we knew there was going to be a social media presence, and we also knew that there was a shorter sales cycle. So we picked quick service restaurants, and we included 5 following brands: Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, Subway, Taco Bell, Wendy's. And we picked these 5 brands because they, based on their Facebook followers and Facebook fans and Twitter followers, these were the 5 brands in the category with the largest social media presence. What this did is it allowed us to look at both aggregate analysis across the category as well as brand specific. So we could look at did Taco Bell's social media efforts have an impact, or did the overall category have an impact on purchase behavior? The way that we collected data was using ChatThread's Brand Encounter platform. The Brand Encounter platform is a mobile and web-based platform that allows consumers to report in real time as they encounter each brand touch point. So the touch point that they can come into contact with could be a TV ad, a billboard ad, Facebook update, an offline word-of-mouth conversation, radio ad, et cetera. It's going to give you a full 360 spectrum from the consumer's perspective. There's no predefined categories. Participants will go through the process for a period of 7 days using their SMS on their phone. We picked SMS purposefully because we wanted the largest representativeness of participation. We didn't use just smartphone users. Participants can tell us in real time when they encounter the brand, what kind of touch point they encounter, whether it's a TV ad or out of home or social media, and then also the quality of their experience. They can submit additional notes, they can submit pictures as well. And we also have a web browser button, so if they're browsing on the desktop or a laptop computer, they can submit all that same information in an easier way for that. On either side of that 7 days, we have a pre and a post survey. We're capturing traditional AAU questions, awareness, attitude, usage questions. We captured consumption and purchase behavior just like any other touch point. So if somebody said they saw a billboard ad and then they went and they purchased in a QSR restaurant, that would be another touch point submission. The nice thing about having the SMS and the data collected in real time is, one, it's not prone to recall bias, and two, everything is time and date stamped, so you're able to get sequential paths to purchase. The way that we recruited participants for this was we screened based on recent QSR visits. They had to visit a quick service restaurant at least a few times per month or more. They had to be active on social media within the past week. For someone to qualify for that, all they had to do would be something like they visited Facebook and they read a blog post or saw a video on YouTube, just any two of any social media venues. And then we also looked specifically in the category social media activity. We had a group of people who were fans or followers of at least one of the QSRs, and we also had a control group who shared the same characteristics in terms of visitation and activity on general social media, but they weren't currently a fan or a follower of any of the QSR brands. And that will become important in a second. We had over 400 participants that participated on a rolling 7-day basis during the first quarter of 2011. In aggregate, there was approximately 8 weeks of data collection, and during that time, they submitted 5,623 touch points. So every time they came into contact with a TV ad or a billboard ad or had an offline conversation or saw a visit to the Facebook page, all of that was considered a touch point, so we have over 5,600 touch points. Now, here are some examples because we get notes. We also get photos and things coming in. So here's an example from Wendy's in the Facebook brand feed. Wendy's put out a message about just a friendly reminder that our burgers are made with 100% pure beef. You see a Facebook friend status update where the people were talking about KFC, how much they enjoyed the delicious meal. You can see examples of blogs, ratings, and reviews. And then also for all the media and marketing touch points, we collected this data as well. So you see billboard ads. So you know it was a McDonald's billboard ad, and we even get details about what specific billboard ad they saw. We'll go to the next slide, please. What's on the next slide is focusing on how we analyze the data. Importantly for this data, when you see other studies about what is the role of social impact in the category, especially when you look at things about like Facebook fans, for example, that they say that Facebook fans spend more and then non-fans, for example. Well, and that's being used as evidence that social media is impactful. But we think there's a self-selection bias built in there. There's a reason why they're Facebook fans, and they're probably already more inclined to spend money on that particular brand. So we don't feel that's great evidence that social media is actually impactful. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at the delta, the change in the increase in consumption frequency or the increase in the amount spent as evidence. So that way, if a Facebook fan is included in our research, then their level of spend is already high. So we want to look, is there anything over and above that that can be attributed to the different touch points that they come into contact with? So we're looking at the changes. We went for a harder case, too. We went for short-term impact, focusing on just 1 week. And we're only reporting statistically significant results in our presentation. The types of analysis that we're going to be reporting are regression-based analysis, logistic regression, looking at what explains which touch point individually or what touch points in combination best predict whether or not somebody would increase their consumption frequency or increase their amount spent. We also use multiple regression analyses to look at how much they spend or how much they increase their consumption frequency. So I'm just going to present the first result, and that's looking at the overall exposure. And what this chart does here is gives you an understanding of the overall touch point landscape for the QSR category. There's actually 21 different touch points that consumers reported to us. Again, we didn't predefine them, but right here we're just showing you the top 10. And then we index this based on the most frequent touch points. Surprise, it's TV ads for the QSR category. The top 2 touch points, but for paid media anyways, are TV ads and out of home. But you see word of mouth, there's a roll-up there of, these are all just offline conversations and recommendation behavior. So there's a lot of offline conversations. The 4th most frequent touch point is social media. That's that roll-up of Facebook, Twitter, online ratings and reviews, blog posts, etc. And then you see PR, news stories and editorials, radio, online digital, print, primarily magazine ads, search, and website round out the top 10. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Irfan, and he's going to talk about the results once we integrated these individual ones, but then also all the possible combinations of these touch points to see what's really driving purchase behavior and sales.
Thanks, Walter. So we looked at 2 types of impacts for spend and consumption. So in spend and consumption, we looked at first, was there a likelihood of any sort of increased spend? So just overall, was there a spend impact, a trend of increased consumption? The second result we looked at for both spend and consumption was there a very significant magnitude of increase with any particular touch points or interactions. So the initial question, does social media have an impact on spend trend? We found that it did, and specifically we found that the likelihood of a spend increase is 1.5 to 7 times non-exposed people. So these are specifically the 2 types of interactions we found that was associated with a higher likelihood of spend. We found that social media by itself, looking specifically at KFC, led to a 7 times greater likelihood of increased spend. And then social media and out of home, looking at that entire QSR category, at about a 1.5 times greater likelihood of increased spend. So some meaningful results in overall magnitude, directional of spend. Then we looked at the magnitude. So were there any particular interactions that had an impact on the spend amount? And just as an aside, we looked at over 60 different interactions between different types of media, and so we're only reporting the ones that were significant. So we did find there was an impact, and specifically it was around social media and PR exposure. So to the extent that people were exposed to those 2 types of touch points, we saw their weekly spend amount go up by 17%. So that's week over week, 17% spend increase from exposure to social media and PR. We then moved to consumption, and again, we looked at 2 things. Was there a directional impact on spend, on consumption trend of social media? And we found that there was. It was about a 2 times greater likelihood of consumption increase. And the 2 specific exposure combinations we found were social media and TV ads doubled the approximate likelihood of consumption increase, and that was observed in Wendy's specifically. And then for the category as a whole, we again saw social media in combination with out of home, resulting in about a 1.5 times increased likelihood of consumption trend. So in terms of frequency, we actually didn't see anything, and so there was something about, there's potentially a question about whether the time period is significant, whether there was enough of a consumption increase, but we didn't see an actual increase in consumption frequency. So what we wanted to do then is we took a look at the exposure of each of the different media types and combinations, and then plotted the different impacts. And this slide here summarized, it shows that TV-only exposure led to a 3 times greater likelihood of spend for one brand, 7 times for social only, Social plus TV, that smaller line there, is about a 2 times greater likelihood. Social plus out of home, that even smaller thing, is about 1.5 times. And then social plus PR led to that association with a 17% increase. So interesting data there in terms of exposure and potential impact of each of the channels. So wrapping up, social media has an impact, particularly the association is especially strong with multiple types of interactions. So we saw spend amount to increase association, about a 2 times higher likelihood of consumption increase. And one of the interesting things is that of all the types of combinations we looked at, only one was just social media. 4 combinations were significant and were in combination social media plus another channel. So this multi-channel nature of exposure appears to be pretty important. The one significant result of social media was the highest in terms of magnitude, but again, we saw the broadest impact when it was across other types of things. So we saw that also that increasing exposure to social plus some of these combinations may be a good idea in terms of evaluating for the media mix. There was more impact relative to the overall exposure of some of the other categories other than, for example, some of the more traditional media. There are some things that we would like to look at in the future, look at data across some other industry sectors, try to understand whether, in this sector, obviously you complete your purchase offline, you might learn about it online. What happens if the entire purchase is online or there's a hybrid? We'd like to get a better sense of longer time periods to understand the impact of TV ads over perhaps a longer time period, and then understand whether there are specific brand activities and look at larger sample size. So that's it. Thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
That's right.
We got it, Just. Thank you so much. You're very gracious. I'm so glad we did it.